To start your printmaking project, you need a design, which you can either draw or you can print off the internet. Keep in mind, look at a lot of examples first, and nothing too easy, but you don't want too difficult because you do have to carve your design out. And you'll also, part of your grade is making a display for it. So you'll have the print, you'll have the block that will turn into a print, and then you'll have the display. So if your prints don't turn out great, you can make a nice display to help your grade. But on the other hand, if you have good prints and do a plain display, you won't get quite as good of a grade. So look at lots of examples, and when you have an idea, either print it off or start with a piece of paper. Your block will be about 4 by 6 inches, so if you're printing it off the internet, shoot for that. If you do anything that the orientation matters, meaning like letters, you don't want your letters to be backwards. You don't want, if it's like the Kansas City Chiefs and you did the arrowhead, you don't want that to be backwards. So on a stamp, your initial design should be backwards, and then when you print it, it ends up forwards. There is an example in the drawer of someone who carved their name forwards, and when they printed it, their name ended up backwards. So you could look at that. But to start out for your design, just write it normal. We'll just do an art theme. So I have art written, and I'll put a paintbrush underneath it, fill the space, and that's kind of plain. So let's add a blob in the corners. Okay, and then I did just finish telling you that it should be backwards. If I were to print this how it looks now, it would end up looking backwards later. So to get it backwards, you don't have to think too hard. Just get a Sharpie, trace over your design. Or if you printed something off the internet, cut it down to 4 by 6 size, or about 4 by 6, and hold it up to the window and trace it so it looks backwards. That works too. You just need it to look backwards so that it will print forward. Okay, so now, flip it over. There, now it is backwards. Perfect. So if I had my print like this, my stamp like this, here's a stamp. It's two-sided. I'm reusing this side. Someone had done this dealer, so it is backwards right now. When you print it, it'd be forward. I'm going to use this side of the block. So pretend this were carved on there. If I were to stamp it, it would look backwards. If I start with it backwards, stamp it, it'll end up looking forwards. Here's how you transfer the design to your block. This is my front side now. This is my back side that looks right. So I'm going to either use graphite paper, or I can create my own layer of graphite. This is the back side. So to create my own layer of graphite, I just scribble anywhere there's a line. You can use graphite paper also. It just, most of the sheets of it are really big. It can be hard to work with. So scribble away. This is the same idea as graphite paper. You've got a layer of graphite, or lead now. Anywhere there's a mark, and face down on your block. This block is very dirty, and I used it for an example with a class. You can kind of see I did the art thing with that class. It doesn't matter if it's dirty. All that matters is what you carve out of it. So I'm going to put this face down. Either have graphite paper or a layer of lead scribbled on there. Trace over it. A dull pencil does work the best. Trace over the design. And I'll have to make a few adjustments on this. If you run your hand over it a bunch of your scribbles will transfer instead of what you intended. So there it is. It's kind of light because I didn't scribble very hard. So you can write on it with a pencil, or what tends to work well is to get a Sharpie, or red pen works, and trace over your design so you can see it better. And I have just about gotten this ready. I want that to swirl in. There's a paint blob faintly right there, I can see. Okay, then I am ready to carve. So, this is a carving tool. It should come without the tips in it, but occasionally someone leaves a tip in it. The tips are found in the end of it. You either unscrew the end or some of the ends just pop off. If you dump it out, you should have at least 3 tips. There will be a 2, a 3, and a 5. This one has 2 number 2s in it, that's the extra. There is such thing as a number 1 and a number 4, we just don't use them. The number 2 and 3 are V-shaped, if you look at the ends of them. They have a little V shape. And then the 5 is U-shaped. The number refers to how big it is, so you'll carve a lot more out with a number 5. Number 2 is for fine detail, and number 3 would be like in between. I'm going to do my letters with a number 3. And I don't want to lose these tips, so I'm going to put them back in the end. Whenever you are ready to change the tip of it, you just need to loosen this top part. Never undo it all the way. I'll show you what's in there, just so you can see, but you don't need to undo it all the way. What you'll find in there are 2 pieces. There's the top, and then these 2 pieces are inside it. If you lose either of these 2 small pieces, the whole tool is useless and you need to buy a new one. And they run about, for all the pieces with the tips, it's about $14. So don't lose these little pieces. But this is what's in it. There's a little clamp, and that's what holds the tip in there. But you don't need to undo it all, you just need to loosen it so you can see those pieces can move around. Then the part with the writing on it of the carving tip goes in between those 2 pieces, and you just tighten it up. When you carve, always make sure you carve away from you. And when people cut themselves, it's always their other hand. So if I'm carving, when I cut myself, it's usually because I have my other hand up here. Get your other hand out of the way. This is called soft cut. So it's really easy to cut. And throw all the little bits away. You can do a different design on the back of your block if you would like. Since it is 2-sided, you'll get to take the block home if you want. If you're not going to take it home, you can leave it here for people to practice on later. You will have to decide what exactly you're cutting out. Whatever you cut out will not get ink. This design would be too hard to cut around the letters because they're so skinny, but if I would have done fatter letters, it would have been a lot nicer looking to carve out the extra and leave the letter raised up. And then that would get the ink on the project instead of the background. But because these letters are so skinny, it probably wouldn't have looked very nice to go around it. And I like to turn my block when I cut it out like this. If you are afraid of cutting yourself, we have these trays, and one end of it goes over the edge of your table, like this, and then this other part would hold the block for you, so you don't have to worry about cutting yourself. When I get to the paintbrush, I can cut out the whole handle, I can cut around it. What tends to look the best with blocks is if you do cut things out around it, it looks really cool. But again, this is such a skinny design here that wouldn't work. You'll have to figure out where to get some detail. This is a pretty simple design, so I really should think of more detail that I can add to it. I'll show you how to print with another block that's all ready to go.